Welcome to the JEMS Product Pod, brought to you by Clarion Events, Fire and Rescue Group, and the Journal of Emergency Medical Services. My name is Ted Lee, and I'm the Editor-in-Chief of JEMS. Along with Jeff Frankel, our Managing Editor, we will be bringing you the latest in gear, technology, and companies that support pre-hospital medicine. And today we have a very special guest with Chief Richard Price from PulsePoint. Thank you for joining me today.
Hey, good morning, Ted.
So why don't you let our audience know a little bit about your background, and then we'll dive into what is and who is PulsePoint.
Okay, great. Again, I'm Richard Price. I'm the president of the PulsePoint Foundation. PulsePoint's a 501c3 based in California. I have a career in the fire service. I was a fire chief in Northern California, and that's where the foundation was formed. It was actually formed by the San Ramon Valley Fire Protection District after success with the PulsePoint app. And when I retired from the fire service, I moved over to the foundation, and I've been running it ever since. So PulsePoint's been around for about 15 years now.
Great. So you mentioned the PulsePoint app and PulsePoint as the foundation. What exactly is PulsePoint, and what is its aim?
So PulsePoint's probably best known for the PulsePoint Respond app. That's an app that 911 centers connect to, public safety agencies connect to the PulsePoint network. And what it allows to happen is people who are trained in CPR, a lot of times these are off-duty professionals, healthcare workers, they carry the app, and they can be notified if they're near a cardiac arrest. So PulsePoint's interfaced to the dispatch center, and when a dispatcher receives a call, telecommunicators processing that call, PulsePoint in the background is watching that call, and if it sees that it's a cardiac arrest, it sees the location, it looks to see if there are any PulsePoint users in the nearby vicinity, and it notifies them, tells them that, sends them a push notification that CPR may be needed, shows them their location, the location of the cardiac arrest, and any AEDs in the vicinity. So agencies use this to try to get CPR started more often, faster, more people on the scene, so that they can get CPR started while the crews are still en route. PulsePoint only notifies people within that immediate vicinity. So these are people maybe that are on the floor above or in the business next door, those kinds of short distances. So kind of expanding how you think about a witnessed arrest. So you might be close enough that you could make a big difference in that outcome, but far enough away that you wouldn't actually witness it and be aware of the event if it wasn't for the alert. So somewhere around 3 million people carry the app, and communities promote it to their community. Jurisdictions promote it to their community, people who are receiving CPR training and things like that. So it just basically amplifies good practice around BLS. It makes your CPR trained citizens more efficient. We can activate them more often. And where you have AEDs in the vicinity, we can get those AEDs in motion more often by reminding people that they're near AEDs and where those AEDs are. So that's the PulsePoint Respond side. PulsePoint also manages the emergency AED registry. So that's a registry that is used in the 911 centers to inform dispatchers during cardiac arrest call processing that there are AEDs available to that caller. So that interface is aware of AEDs that are in the jurisdiction, and it gives the dispatcher the ability to recommend those instead of just asking if there's an AED on site. It allows them to inform the callers that there's AEDs nearby. And that registry also allows us to alert AED owners that their AED may be needed nearby as well. So a lot there, but that's kind of an introduction. PulsePoint spends about half its time on Respond and about half its time on the emergency AED registry.
Well, that's great. So you mentioned about 3 million people have this app on their phone, but obviously there's an interface with telecommunications and dispatch centers or the 911 centers. About how many do you know of that are instituting this technology as well?
So, on the response side, the ability to alert people who are CPR trained that are near cardiac arrest, it's more than 5,100 communities have that capability. A lot more than that use the emergency AED registry. So the emergency AED registry, again, allows the telecommunicators, the call takers, to know where AEDs are.
So always a helpful thing. I mean, being in EMS education for as long as I was up with the community outreach, you always mention to the students, look for an AED, but not everybody knows that there's one around or that there's one on the floor above or the floor below. And, it's just kind of, the panic sets in. So having that kind of resource to have the telecommunicator, giving them the CPR information and go, oh, and by the way, there's an AED just down the hall or one floor up from you, is pretty useful.
Yeah, I like you gave a good example there, Ted, where dispatchers today will commonly give pre-arrival CPR instructions, right? TCPR, telecommunicator CPR. It's considered best practice today, but I'm sure in your career you can remember back that dispatch centers didn't always give CPR instructions over the
Right,
phone, and it was crews are on the way and we just waited, right? So
right.
it's you can imagine the benefit of telecommunicator CPR, giving those directions, getting CPR started while the crews are en route is very important. But still, it's fairly uncommon today for a telecommunicator to know where the AEDs are. There's
Right.
that common question in all the protocols will be, is there an AED available? Right? Dispatchers ask, telecommunicators ask, is there an AED available? And what we're trying to do is to change that to there are 3 nearby AEDs. Can you send someone to the front desk, to send them to the pool deck to retrieve the AED? So just like TCPR, we're promoting and we advocate strongly for TAED, which is telecommunicators knowing where those AEDs are. And we do that by integrating with software that's already in those centers. So if you think about software like Priority Dispatch Pro QA or APCO in Telecom, or PowerPhone Total Response, tactical maps like Rapid Deploy. These are software packages that are in front of the call takers. They're using to provide pre-arrival instructions, emergency medical dispatcher type protocols. And we build the application access to the AEDs into those. So the dispatchers are already in familiar workflows. They're already using products that just can have the added benefit of knowing where AEDs are. So they're not looking at, emergency AED screen, PulsePoint screen, or anything like that. They're inside familiar software and workflow. And if the software which has a connection to the emergency AED registry, sees that there's nearby AEDs, it changes the protocol. And it will say, instead of, is there an AED available? It'll say there's 3 nearby AEDs. So the dispatchers just are doing what they normally do. And we think that integration is what's going to make this much more practical. Um, and and we do all this in partnership with those other companies I mentioned at no cost. So the foundation funds the emergency AED registry, and companies that interface to it don't charge for those interfaces. So if you're using ProQA, this is just a feature that you can turn on. Doesn't make ProQA any more expensive, doesn't cost to be able to provide those AED locations for callers. So we're strong advocates for this. We spend a lot of time at trade shows talking about this, promoting this, reaching out to public safety agencies, doing events like we're doing here with you today to try to make agencies aware of it and let them know just really how easy it is to start recommending AED locations. And just kind of back to where you started that, it's very similar to giving CPR instructions. It's just we're saying CPR instructions plus AED locations.
Right. And I mean, for most of the group that's going to be listening to this, we know the importance of an AED. But if we have somebody that's kind of a layperson that might not understand, just how important AEDs are, could you give us a little bit of information on that?
Yeah, so if you think about the stats nationwide, if if you get CPR and AED prior to crews arriving, chance of survival is about 50%. Without CPR and AED, it's only about 10%. So it makes a significant difference if CPR started, compressions are started, you begin to mechanically, manually circulate blood through the body, and keep those organs alive, keep the brain alive. But it takes an AED to restart a heart. So the combination of those two, we always say, good ALS begins with good BLS. And if crews arrive on scene and CPR is not started, there's no AED there. The crews are starting, those ALS crews are starting in such a hole. When they arrive on scene and they see somebody doing CPR, especially if they're doing good CPR, there's a AED attached to that patient's chest. I mean, they know, hey, we have a much better chance here of making a difference.
Yeah. So, interesting thing, of course, we've seen the transition and kind of migration in 911 from landlines where we kind of knew, okay, it's coming from this building or it's coming from this house, to cell phones. So, this tracking system, I mean, helps significantly with kind of the unknowns. I mean, if you had something, at a local church or you had something at the airport, you kind of knew, okay, yes, they're going to have one of these, but when something comes across on a cell phone, you really have no idea.
Yeah, exactly. And the listen to these tapes, listen to the 911 tapes and they kind of, the caller is calling in, they're at a museum visiting and they're calling 911, my friend just collapsed or somebody's collapsed here. And the dispatcher asks, is there an AED available? The caller doesn't know, the dispatcher doesn't know. But we do know now, like where that call is from. We know the location of the cell phone, and that is passed to the emergency AED registry. So, as soon as the protocol starts running, um, you're in ProQA Protocol 9, they will send the location to the registry. The registry will return an ordered list of AEDs, kind of pre-fetch it because it's anticipated that, you're in this protocol, you're probably going to need an AED. And then as soon as they get to that question in the protocol, the dispatcher their dialogue just changes to there's two AEDs in that museum. Is there a second rescuer available that you can send for an AED? If there is, then they're directed to those AEDs. If there's not, then CPR instructions begin. The protocols are built to anticipate, is there an AED available? Is there a second rescuer available? But the dispatchers, they're just following the dialogue of the protocol that's figuring out those kinds of things on its own.
Right, great. So you mentioned the registry. So, of course, if there's a registry that's documenting where these AEDs are, somebody has to tell who these are and who owns them and where they're at. So how does an organization or an individual get involved with the registry and get these things in the system so people know?
Right. So this is where the work is for a community, to make sure that they know where the AEDs are in their community. And a lot of times the agencies do know a lot of their AEDs. They may know where all the municipal AEDs are. They may know where all the AEDs in their schools are. But they have to do outreach to the business community. And we have a lot of tools and a lot of support. And since it's October and it's Sudden Cardiac Awareness Month, like one of the things that we do every year is we run a nationwide contest. So if you were to go to pulsepoint.org/AED contest, you could read the rules. We put up a number of prizes for agencies to promote sort of treasure hunt type activities in their community to do the outreach. Every time somebody makes a recommendation for an AED in a community registry, they have a chance to win a $500 Amazon gift card. We give away 10 of those in the month of October. And the agency that registers the most AEDs into their registry, this year they win 5 Zoll 3 AEDs. So you can go to those contest rules, and like that's just one activity that you can do to help do outreach. We have a partnership with Google, where we've used Google business profiles to outreach to communities. Like every business really has a Google business profile, and this is where they might have their business hours, for example, and we connect to that so we know the business hours that they're open for the AEDs in non 24/7 AEDs. But they might reach out to a business and say, "Hey, 4th of July is coming out. Make sure your hours are accurate," or other types of things. So businesses are used to corresponding and getting these emails where it'll say, "Hey, if you have a AED, please register it." So we have an app that you can use, PulsePoint AED, a very simple app to add an AED. You can just download that app and add your first AED in your community. We also have a very simple to remember domain, aed.new, to add a new AED. Just go to a browser, type aed.new. You can add it there. And you can look at our resources page. Those are available if you look at the AED contest page, the types of social media outreach, the sample press releases, all different kinds of promotions that you can do to make your community aware of your registry and that you're trying to build it. We have digital billboards. We have a lot of space on digital billboards where you can promote it, and we'll actually show the number of AEDs you have in your community. And if somebody adds an AED, it'll change on the billboard. So we do a lot of work to help agencies build their registries, a lot of strategies there.
Well, that's great. I mean, we all know that, EMS, fire, police stretched as thin as they possibly can. Resources can't be everywhere. That, we need the support of the community to be able to really care for one another. And to have these resources, known resources, at people's disposal, could be a game changer for the individual, for the family that is going through this. Because I'm sure we've run across instances where 911 it's been a while. It takes time for somebody to get there. But if we'd only known that there was an AED next door, or that 2 floors up there was an AED, that there might have been a different outcome for that.
Right. Now, the other thing we're doing, Ted, with the registry, we talked about the dispatcher sort of pushing the location to the caller. The other thing that we do with the registry is if you have an AED, so you have an AED in your home, you can register that AED. So it's in the registry, and you can subscribe to AED needed alerts. So if there's a cardiac arrest near the AED, you're notified. So you're not calling 911, but someone has called 911, reported it. Say your neighbor's house has reported a cardiac arrest. We'll see that you have an AED nearby, and we'll notify you if you're registered and subscribed to be notified if your AED may be needed nearby. So that's a separate way to get those AEDs in motion. So any AED, regardless of manufacturer or model, can receive notifications that there's a cardiac arrest nearby. And if you're available to bring that AED to the scene, again, we'll show you your location and the location of the cardiac emergency so that you can bring your AED.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's great. And, technology is a wonderful thing, and it's great to see it when it works for people. So you mentioned that this month, October, was Sudden Cardiac Arrest Awareness Month. So this is all part of the campaigns to make people more aware.
Yeah, I think we run a contest, so the AED contest, but we also have a Sudden Cardiac Arrest Month toolkit to just promote CPR, AED use, help people understand the differences between heart attack and cardiac arrest, things like that. So you can go to our website and just search Sudden Cardiac Arrest Month or Cardiac Arrest Toolkit, and we have a complete toolkit with all different kinds of resources that you can use in your community to promote the month and the importance of CPR training and having an AED.
Yeah. So, October, busy month for you. Obviously, the contest is always, sometimes we need to spur people into helping themselves. So the contests usually go a pretty far way in helping the community help itself, kind of so to speak. So I want to thank you for joining me today. I appreciate your time and the dedication of PulsePoint to this very needed cause. Is there anything else, any other messages that you'd like to get out, and especially like we mentioned with October being the awareness month for this? What else?
Yeah, I think that if you have any questions on this, on the AED side of the house, you can go to a browser and type in aed.fyi, and it'll provide a summary of everything we provide on the AED side. On the PulsePoint Respond side, you can go to pulsepoint.fyi and get the information on the Respond side of the house as well. And I think the one of the other messages here, one of the things that recently happened is can I take another minute or two, Ted?
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah.
All right. So let me just say that people may know of the National AED Registry that was owned by Zoll. It was Zoll's product. It had sort of similar goals of the emergency AED registry that PulsePoint hosts. Recently, Zoll donated the National AED Registry to the Emergency AED Registry. So now there's just one. So that was a very generous donation. I think that they see the advantage of not having sort of a vendor version of a national registry, having it be a nonprofit neutral party that manages that registry that all the vendors will want to participate in. There are a lot of APIs and things that are built into the registry to allow vendors to do various things. Everybody who can add value to the registry can use various automated ways to do things programmatically. So that was a very generous donation. I wanted to recognize them for sort of joining with us in this mission of having a 911 registry that's available, having it be available at no cost. And I think they're worthy of recognition for what they did in doing that.
Yeah, I'm sure, because I'm just like, your organization spent a lot of time, money, and resources into bringing the registry up. I'm sure theirs did as well, bringing their aspect of it. So having a single entity, I think, reduces confusion. Like you mentioned, having it run by an independent or, somebody removed from maybe the manufacturing business would give it, a little more clarity and definition. So.
Yeah, and the other vendors, they're not having to interface with two products. They can just interface with one. And I think it makes it easier for the industry to sort of get behind the initiative. I think we just sort of learned over the years that it's not enough to just place AEDs. It's not enough to have them in a registry. You need more affirmative steps to really push these AEDs into motion. And so we appreciate their donation.
Well, there's always the aspect too of, you got to crawl before you walk before you run before you sprint. There's a point to where, okay, we needed to get AEDs out. Okay, now they're out there. Now what? Oh, well, we need to do this. And, it's a step-by-step process. But it sounds like, through your app and the other programs that you have, that you're really coming full circle with utilizing the resources available to their greatest potential.
Yeah, I mean, today PulsePoint is processing more than 800 cardiac arrests. So agencies are reaching out to PulsePoint for help with AEDs and nearby responders for more than 800 cardiac arrests a day. So we've come a long way over the past 15 years of seeing, the majority of the cardiac arrests that are occurring in the country and putting AEDs and responders who are nearby in motion. So, you can learn more at pulsepoint.org. Pulsepoint.org/stats will show all the system-wide stats, numbers like that, and how many AEDs. We recommend more than 1,000 AED locations every day. So the network is growing and is very effective. And if you're not recommending AEDs in your dispatch center, please reach out and learn more.
That's great. Well, thank you very much for your time and the effort that PulsePoint and everybody that you work with in getting this message out. It's a great thing for the community. So thank you again.
Thanks, Ted. Thank you, JEMS.